Thank you. Is Mr. Hardcastle expected to join us?
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't heard otherwise.
Okay. All right, I'll start with the preamble, and hopefully by then he will have joined in. Good evening. Tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live stream video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary-Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca, and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, that is 905-815-6095. The phone number is also posted on your screen below the live page at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call. When you call in, staff will ask for your name and item number that you wish to address and your telephone number. And then further instructions will be provided for you to join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, you'll have to press *6 to unmute yourself. The applicant or agent will then be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for a presentation. You'll be asked to state your full name and address for the record. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make your presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to any comments made by interested parties and answering questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns within staff report, particularly with the proposed conditions, this will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussion. Any person desiring a notice of a decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary-Treasurer. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consent applications to the applicant, agent, and any other person who has filed a written request for such notice. The last day to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal will be noted on the decision. Only the applicant, specified persons, and public bodies may appeal the committee's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In November 2022, Bill 23 legislation, the More Homes Built Faster Act, amended the Planning Act to remove appeal rights for members of the public. If no appeal is received within the prescribed timeframe, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary will then notify the applicant and anyone who has received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful to the members of the committee, town staff, and any other person participating in the electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. Okay, we have only one regret this evening, Mr. Talowski. Do I have any declarations of pecuniary interests? I see none. Thank you. Madam Secretary-Treasurer, I'll now be taking withdrawals. Anyone who is in attendance who seeks to withdraw an application or defer an application, perhaps to discuss further with staff, Please raise your hand and the Secretary Treasurer will invite you in to speak.
We have one coming, Madam Secretary. One moment.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Curtis Vancouver.
Good evening, Mr. Vancouver, go ahead.
I'm representing file number CAV 163-2024 at 1291 Cambridge Drive. We're looking to seek a deferral this evening in efforts to work with town staff.
Very well, thank you. Members, all those in support of a deferral. The application has been deferred. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer at your earliest convenience.
Yes, thank you so much. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Another one coming, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Ricci, go ahead.
Yes, I apologize. I'm trying to get my camera to work here. Probably not visible.
No.
All right, maybe I'll proceed without my camera on.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm here representing the Committee of Adjustment application at 1457 Constance Drive, CAVA 164-2024. And I'd like to request a deferral to address planning staff comments that we received late last Friday evening. And hopefully we can work on a development that modifies the design slightly to address planning staff comments. So respectfully, we ask for a deferral to next available meeting if possible. Thank you.
Okay, very well. Members, all those in support of a deferral. Okay, the application has been deferred. Mr. Ricci, you'll see the Secretary at your earliest convenience and she'll try and get you in at the nearest available date.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
One more coming, Madam Chair.
Very well, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Ms. Medvedev, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm here before you tonight speaking to application CAVA 165-2024 for 21 Pebble Ridge Place. We're seeking a deferral to address staff concerns and work collaboratively with staff.
Thank you. All those in support of a deferral. Okay, the application has been deferred. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer at your earliest convenience.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You too. Anyone else, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
No more hands, Madam Chair.
Okay. Proceed with the first item on our agenda, which is a consent application B2406 at 1260 Marlborough Court. Again, that's application B2406 at 1260 Marlborough Court. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Casey Kolchicki. I'm a planner with Lincoln Pramo Limited, representing 1260 Marlborough Court Limited on the proposed consents and minor variances. Items 5.1 through 5.4 are all related to each other. The two consent applications to establish easements as well as resulting minor variances. I'll be brief. We've worked extensively with staff over the last few months to bring these applications before you tonight. We are in support of their recommendations for approval of the consent with conditions as well as the minor variance applications. The nature of the application is it's a mortgaging purpose. It's to sever. There's two existing apartment buildings. One's a newer build, and one was constructed back in, I believe, in the 1970s. So the purpose of the consent is to separate the properties into two entities to allow separate mortgages to be applied. All of the variances resulting from the severance are existing conditions, and the property will continue to operate for the residents as it does currently today. Easements will be established for access across both properties as well as servicing. The only variance that I would speak to directly is one of the variances was to request a reduction in bicycle parking from 30 spaces required to 0. That's for the older apartment building. I do note that that can actually be amended if committee is agreeable. There is a storage facility within that building that provides parking for 20 spaces for bicycles. So that variance should actually be to reduce the minimum number of bicycle parking spaces to 20 instead of 0. But other than that, we are in agreement with all other recommendations. I'm available to answer any questions if any committee members have any. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions, Mr. Kolchik, at this time? Go ahead, Mr. Dickey. You have to unmute yourself again.
You guys got it?
Yep.
Just a little bit confused. It seems that you got a community adjustment variance in 2020 to reduce the parking rate to point is that you're reducing the parking rate again. I just wanted to, I can give you the numbers. But you got a committee of adjustment, you reduce the parking rate to 0.9 and 1.25. I could be wrong there. Now you're going for it seems to be a different parking rate. Could you help me out on that matter, sir?
Certainly. So the previous minor variance was for the property as a whole, which was the two apartment buildings as well as the shared parking structure. The way that the property is going to operate going forward is the parking structure is 2 levels of underground parking. So one deck will be assigned to the newer building, and the second deck is going to be applied to the older building. So as a result of the severance, the parking rate changes because we're taking an entire deck of parking and applying it to each individual building instead of the entire garage being available to both buildings. So just the way that the unit count is divided between the two buildings and the way that the parking deck counts, it alters the numbers from the previously approved minor variance.
So doesn't that mean you're going to have for whichever the smaller building, 70 units, you're using a whole parking level for those relative to that 70 unit building? Doesn't that mean your parking rate is going to be higher? Much higher than the other. I'm sorry. The parking rate on level 1 will be different than the parking rate on level 2 if you're signing it like that. I don't understand it, so try me again.
I understand where you're coming from, and you are correct. For the sake of argument, the decks of parking have similar counts for parking. However, the older building also has a surface parking area that has a balance of parking applied to it. So, and through this process, we visited the site multiple times to do parking analysis and saw that the parking, garage, and surface parking were both underutilized based on the approved rates. So from an operation standpoint, there's no concerns from the ownership group of applying the parking decks to each individual building and allowing the surface parking of the older building to remain dedicated to that. So while it changes the parking rates because of the resulting severance, the operation of the building and the residence is going to remain as status quo as it is day to day today.
Okay, let's assume that I don't have a problem with giving the consent. Don't get me wrong there. It's just the way the parking thing doesn't sit with me. And don't get me wrong, possibly because I don't understand. So let's assume that the 6-story building with 70 units in the future comes under a different owner. We would have, if we were to approve your variances, we would be approving variances at lower parking rate than what we had in 2020. This is what I don't understand. That would be applicable to the 6-story building, would we not? Why would we want to do that?
Through the consent process, we will be establishing joint access and maintenance agreements to ensure that future access to that parking deck for the future building, if it ever does change hands, remains with that building. So if the properties were to ever separate into different ownership, each building would still have its adequate parking facilities available to it.
You know what I don't like? I don't like the fact that we approve this the way the variances are written. 2 or 3 months from now, somebody's going to come along and say, oh, in November of 2020, you approved a parking rate of 0.9 spaces per apartment. Or 0.09, isn't it? Well, that may be visitor. 0.5 spaces per apartment for apartments over 75. I'm sorry, under 75 meters squared, right? But see, we would be approving it, but that's not what is going to actually happen on the 2 properties, because the easements will allow something different from the way you're saying, correct?
That's correct.
So why can't the parking rates be adjusted to what you're actually going to have? And why do you need to have the parking level? They're shared parking anyhow. Why do you need one parking level? Okay, let me back up. If you're going to assign, let me back up again. How many parking spaces are in each parking lot? Approximately, or do they differ?
They do differ slightly. I don't. I would have to go through some notes here and find out the exact counts on each deck.
If I may help to clarify, that there is no impact to the parking that's being provided on site. Through the previous minor variance, there was an arrangement for the parking to be approved at that rate, based on the property being one parcel. two buildings on one parcel. So essentially, the reason why we need variance now for parking, as well as the other matters, relates to the severance. So because there was a previous approval in 2020 for the whole site, as soon as we create the consent to the severance, we need to recognize the relief needed to create those two separate parcels. So essentially, there's no change to what was already permitted. It's just how it's being assigned, which, as the agent has indicated, there are safeguards in place, or will be, for easements to ensure continuation of access to those parking spaces for future landowners.
Can they not change? I'm sorry, I was you mentioned.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
Can we're giving the if we're giving the consent now? Can the owners not come back and then change the easements? Once they own, the two of them own the properties and they're separate, they could agree to a different set of easements relative to the parking.
So through the chair to the member, once these easements are registered on title, you can't easily take those easements away. Both the owners need to agree to removing the easements, and so it will continue in perpetuity. There are conditions included in the agreements to protect each interest of each property.
Mr. Kochek, I know from the background that was provided that the purpose of the consent is to actually allow for these easements and servicing of the buildings and so forth. But to your knowledge, there is no purpose other than that in terms of the severance, for example, if we alluded to a sale of one property versus the other.
The plan is to have both properties will remain under the current ownership. It is just to be able to apply mortgage to the buildings separately instead of as a single entity.
Okay.
The proposal is just to recognize the existing conditions between the two properties as proposed.
And Ms. McPhail, you have the agreements that will be registered on title for both properties with the town, correct?
I have not seen those agreements. Those are generally worked out between the lawyers, and some of the conditions that are included if the committee approves the applications, particularly the consents, there are requirements that some of those conditions are to the satisfaction of our legal services department. So for those shared facilities. So there are safeguards in place with the town and with the region for servicing matters that those agreements are in place.
Okay, and most of these are in the appendix A, B, and C, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Very well. So I'm satisfied. Mr. Dickey, do you have any further clarifications? No.
I don't get it at all.
Okay. Let me try wording it in my way, and then please feel free, Ms. McPhail or Mr. Kochek, to correct me if I'm wrong. Everything is staying the same in terms of the ownership. They're only severing the land to hold the two buildings separately so that they can have the easement, the servicing, the mortgages of these two buildings on separate land titles, and the agreements to make sure that should one of these buildings transfer ownership to another individual or organization, that everything will remain status quo in terms of parking and allotment of spaces.
That is 100% correct.
Okay.
Yes. That's correct.
And the safeguards are available, and they are part of the conditions that the town staff has meticulously put in our appendixes.
That is correct.
Okay. Are you okay now, Mr. Dickey?
Still don't understand. 2020, the variance was to 0.9 spaces per apartment under 175. But now we're at 0.5 spaces for apartments that are under 170, under 75 meters square. So why is the number? And if it's lower on one, it should be higher on the other apartment. That's what I don't understand.
Did you not say that there were surface parking spaces that are included? Do those not feed into the number just to satisfy Mr. Dickey?
All of the parking is in the calculations, and the previous minor variance was for the property as a whole with 2 buildings, and because the underground parking structure is remaining on one property and we're going to access it via easements, that's why both numbers technically come down. Is because if we had the parking on the newer build, that's where you would have had the scales going up and leveling off each other. In this situation, because all of the parking is on one parcel, the way that the numbers work out, both parking rates are going to be lowered because all the parking is now just being left on one parcel, except for, I think there's 20 surface parking spaces in the podium of the retained of the newer build. Again, we worked with staff through the math on this one just to ensure that we got the numbers correct.
I don't see the math, but I have to think whether that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I see what's going on here. I understand what's going on. I disagree with the fact that just because now you're doing it to get a mortgage. Once we get a consent, you can sell those properties to 2 different people. So there's, that doesn't. I'm not, I realize that, but whether your in theory, your easements will protect the interests of both parties. Don't get me wrong. I understand all that. It's just I don't understand why the rates are different than what they were in 2020, or why are the rates the same for the two properties? You would have thought the rate on one property would have been different than the parking rate on the other. That's what I do not understand. And I know you tried to explain it to me. Should have explained that 2 weeks ago in your letter.
Anyhow, Ms. McPhail.
Thank you to the chair.
Sorry, if I don't see your hand because I'm looking at 2 screens, feel free to chime in. Okay.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you. So just to clarify too, that this newer building provides affordable dwelling units, and to allow the consent for the mortgaging purposes would allow the continuation of the provision of those units. So so just as a further provide support to the provision of those units, this is suggested and recommended. I see that Kate has her hand up now too.
Okay, go ahead, Kate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If it is at all helpful, as I was involved in the original sets of applications, through you, Madam Chair, to the member, it might help to not look at this as a rate starting point, but as a number starting point. There is a total number of parking spaces that was allocated for the property as a whole, which had 2 separate buildings. The bylaw speaks about a rate. So when we had a total number, we worked backwards to determine, okay, well, what is that rate based on the number of units? Because there is an equity in the balance of the units, right? As you said, 1260 is the original older building. It has more units. There is more parking allocated to it in the variance. It's 159 spaces or whatever it is. Whereas the newer building, which includes the affordable housing units, has a smaller number of units. So there was an equitable distribution in the number, and working backwards, that's why you have the different rates. It's because there's more parking allocated for 1260. You work backwards, it gets you a certain rate. there's a certain number allocated for 1254. You work backwards, you get a certain rate. So I understand what you're suggesting, that if it's a rate, it would apply to both properties because that's the same parking rate. But we never started with a rate. We started with a total number of parking units and worked our way backwards to a calculation that would reflect what the bylaw has. So that might be why you're seeing, or you're maybe confused as to why the rate is not remaining the same. But what we can assure you is that the number of parking spaces is the number of parking spaces. That remains unchanged. And with the easements that are being provided, those parking spaces still remain accessible and shared by both, and will be distributed and further discussed in terms of their access through the condition of the consent, which requires the registration of the easement and the maintenance agreements. So I don't, just to close the matter off, Madam Chair, perhaps, like, that's the last ditch effort I guess I can assist in terms of just being here and happening to listen to the conversation.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I hope that is sufficient. Unless Mr. Hardcastle has anything to say, I think we should take the matter into committee. I think we'll move the consent first, and then we will move the variances that are attached to each consent. And I just want to remind both members that Mr. Polchik had amended the variance. Which number is it? I'm losing track. It's the bicycle one. From instead of 0, it's 20, going from 30 spaces. So which variance is that? That would be variance number 3. Am I correct?
That's correct. It's variance number 3 on file CAVA 190 2024.
Perfect. Okay, so who would like to move a motion on the consent? Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you looking for me to carry forward motions for all 4, the 2 consents and the 2 variances?
I would think so. It's just goes smoother that way.
Having reviewed the material, having undertaken my site visit, having heard the presentation of the consultant and the conversation, I am satisfied that that the consent application, and I'll be specific here, consent application B2406 is satisfactory. It meets the tests under the Planning Act. It conforms to the city's official plan and addresses matters of functionality. Accordingly, I'll put forward a motion to approve, subject to the conditions contained within Appendix A. I will leave that without reading through them specifically. Yeah. So motion for B2406. Moving on to B2407.
I think we should.
Yeah, variance to go along with it.
Yeah, but let's vote on the consent first, and then move.
Okay, we don't want to move them as a block. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I suppose we could.
Probably deal with variance in the consent for one particular property at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. So we'll do B2406, and we'll move that. Then we'll follow it with the consent that's attached to it, and then we'll move on to B2407. Okay. So the motion for B2406 that's on the table by Mr. Hardcastle is approved, subject to the conditions in Appendix A. All those in support? Okay, motion carries, none opposed. So now we'll look at the variance attached to
Madam Chair, 1260.
yes, 1260 Marlborough.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit and reviewed the materials, including the written staff report, and having heard the presentation from the applicant, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the four tests of the Act, and they would be appropriate in lieu of consent application B2406. Accordingly, I'll put forward a motion of approval for including a revised variance number 3 in accordance with the presentation to include a minimum of 20 bike parking spaces for variance 3, finding that the variances conform to the test of the Act.
Very well. All those in support of the motion? Okay, the application for CAV 090 of 2024 for 1260 Marlborough Court is approved, none opposed. Yeah, that was subject to receiving approval of consent applications, and okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for helping me out there. My head got away from me there. Yep.
Okay. All right. So next, we'll look at B2407. The consent there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the materials and having undertaken my site visit and having heard the presentation from the applicant, I am satisfied that this consent is in the public interest, conforms to the official plan and appropriate planning legislation. I will put forward a motion of approval, subject to the conditions contained within Appendix B of the staff report.
Very well. All those in support of the motion? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. And this will follow through with CAV 091 of 2024 at 1254 Marlborough Court variance application.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, having undertaken my site visit, reviewed the materials, including the written staff report, having heard the presentation from the applicant, I am satisfied that the variances conform to the four tests of the Act. Accordingly, I will put forward a motion of approval, subject to the condition that the owner applicant receive approval of consent applications B2406 and B2407 and minor variance application CAVA 090 of 2024.
Very well. And all those in support of this application? Okay. Motion carries, none opposed. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Polchik.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Have a good evening. Okay. We are now looking at okay. So the next item on our agenda is CAV 164 of 2024 at 150 Richmond Road. Again, that's CAV 164 of 2024 at 150 Richmond Road. We have a letter of objection from a Mr. Mark Chaboir, who's also looking to attend. If anyone is interested in this application and would like to call in, the number is 905-815-6095. Again, 905-815-6095. Okay. Mr. Hardcastle?
Madam Chair, if I might, I believe that we were referring to item CAVA 166 of 2024.
Yeah, I guess I have an error here. Let me just scroll down to my.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you are right. It is 166. I have an error on my sheet right here. So once again, sorry, I apologize. It is CAVA 166 of 2024 at 150 Richmond Road. Again, it's CAV 166. The agent for this application, Edward Baha, if I'm pronouncing this correctly.
One moment, Madam Chair. I'm trying to move him into the meeting.
Very well, thank you.
Madam Chair, he's in the meeting. He's just on mute. I can't unmute him.
Yeah, Mr. Baha, you have to press *6 in order to unmute yourself.
Sorry, give me a minute.
Okay, and you have to turn the TV on mute because the signal will interfere.
Sorry, I was on the phone. I was coming from work.
Okay, no, go. That's fine. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Okay, so we. Oh man. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm trying to disconnect my phone.
Okay.
I think I'm successful doing that. Okay, so we have asked for a minor variance for the side setback for the garage and for the eaves of the roof. The condition of the roof is existing. It's an existing carport. The same position, the same dimensions that we're proposing. So existing side setback right now is 0.605. And we're proposing to keep the existing. Also the eaves, instead of 16 inches, we're making them 30, so 1 feet. So we can have 1 feet from the property line. Sorry, because I was running. As for the, I read the report of the staff. I appreciate that they wrote the report, but I would say I disagree with most of it. As a 40 years old engineer, I disagree because they are saying on the report that the drainage from the existing carport and from the area behind that moves towards the road, Richmond Road. The existing carport is a asphalt paved area that is above
the existing ground area there, the grass. So there is no possible that the water can go above the slab and past the. And I think 2 weeks ago, the staff asked me for the site grading. And the same day, I prepared the site grading for them, show me them where the direction of the drainage. And I think they responded back, they said that they won't accept it because it's too late. And I don't know, I prepared the same day, the site grading. Never was asked before when I applied for committee or during the process of permit application. So in my opinion, the drainage, the building of the walls, because already we have that structure built there. So the posts are there, the slab is there, and we're not disturbing the drainage. The swell is gonna stay that it is right now. So I don't know why we have a problem of the drainage there. Because that seems the reason that the staff is saying that they disagree, that doesn't pass the 4 tests of the Planning Act.
Okay. Mr. Bai, you are building a new garage though, correct? Because you're putting in a new roof, you're putting in new walls.
So the roof is existing.
So you're using the existing roof that is there right now?
I don't know what the owner plans, but it's gonna be the same, it's the same shape, the same size. So the roof might stay there. They're just gonna build the walls and the foundation for the walls. And keep the structure there. Might be cheaper for them.
Yeah, but from the picture that's provided, the roof doesn't look the same as in the drawings. I believe that. I understand that you're repurposing the space and you're enclosing it now, but it's certainly more building than just using the existing roof and building the walls.
So the size of the garage right now, I think it's gonna be, the garage is gonna be only, instead of 6 meters long, it's gonna be 6.4 meters. But the width, it's gonna stay 377 like it is right now, where the posts are that keeping the existing roof.
Okay. Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Ba? Any items of clarification? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the applicant, the staff comments did not appear to me to be objecting to the proposal, but instead seeking information to assist them in understanding the impact of the proposal on the grading. Whereas you've sort of characterized this as an objection, and staff were actually clear in the comments that they would they were not necessarily speaking negatively to the proposal, but seeking that information. Would you be inclined to accommodate a deferral to give staff the opportunity to review the grading plan that you provided, or to incorporate any additional information that staff may require within that grading plan in order to assess the impacts of the variance?
I don't know what are my choices here. So I already sent them the site plan. It's simple site plan. It's not that it shows only the direction where the drainage are gonna go, and they don't interfere with the building of the garage. So anyway, if I want to, I don't know. I didn't ask the client because I thought it was a very minor, and I didn't ask the client because already I'm supposed to pay for the deferral, not the client. because it's gonna seem like it's more my problem, not their problem. Because I heard that it's also a fee for the deferral.
Yes, there is a fee.
Madam Chair, can I turn that question around a little bit for staff to speak to their own words? Just to make sure I've got that. I probably should have directed that to staff first, but maybe I could ask staff if they could fill in some of the blanks around what they're looking for in order to be able to do a more fulsome analysis and give this committee some direction on where they'd like to go. And I'm obviously not presupposing the outcome of the review, but.
Of course, go ahead, Sarah.
Perfect. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members. The staff report did indicate, as you stated, Mr. Hardcastle, that there isn't a severe objection. We just want to understand more information regarding the as right now we don't have a clarity on how the grading will be impacted, which is why we have asked for further clarification through a grading plan, which we did not get a chance to review or receive. Those are the comments that indicated in the report, as you stated earlier, that it is generally solely on the grading point right now. And
okay. Thank you. Madam Secretary Treasurer, what is the deferral fee as it stands right now? It's 680 something, correct?
Madam Chair, it's $781.
Sorry, 781. So that's the deferral fee, just for clarity, so yes, that Mr. Baha knows, because he was asking. Go ahead, Mr. Baha.
So I heard Sarah, if I can speak with her, and I did send because she said she didn't get the grading plan. I sent and I got the same day that they asked me, and they sent me an email. They said that it's too late to accept it. I don't know. I sent it within 2-3 hours that they asked me. So now I don't know. I don't.
When did you send it, Mr. Baha?
I can check my email, but I think 2 weeks ago, when the same day they asked me, they sent an email that they needed a grading plan because they had concerns about the grading. I prepared it because I'm entitled as a structural engineer to do that, and I sent it to the staff. And I think they replied back to me. They said it's too late to accept it, to review it. So.
Oh, for the circulation, Ms. Sarah, can you comment on that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I have not received it via email. I do recall asking for it, but unfortunately, I'm not sure if it was sent to me or wrong email, but I have not received it via email.
Okay. Okay. I propose, and Mr. Hardcastle and Mr. Dickey can speak their minds on that. It seems like Mr. Baha sent it. Can you look at the date of your email, Mr. Baha? And if
November, sorry, madam. So I was just checking. It's November 15, 10:35 a.m. that Sharon sent me an email and it says, we aren't able to accept the initial drawing you are sending to us. So I sent it on November 14, site grading on 4:12 p.m. The same day I received an email that they asked me for site grading. So on 15th, they sent me back. So 12 days ago, they said that they can't circulate it in the internal departments.
Okay. Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Yes, Madam Chair. We did receive an additional drawing from Edward. However, the file had already been circulated, so we couldn't add any additional drawings to it. Edward was informed of that.
And did you inform him that if for the submission, for him to take a deferral, so that he would have a chance to be reviewed?
We didn't provide that information. However, I did tell him if he wanted to include it tonight in his presentation for you, he could include it and you would see it at that point.
And did he?
We did not receive any presentation material from Edward. We are just using the supporting documents.
Okay. Mr. Edward, did you? So here's the thing. This is how I'm thinking about it. We've had several deferrals this evening. If you want to email the grading so that we can put it up on the screen, but that will also take some time, and it might hinder Sarah from getting a proper perspective on and circulating it to the departments. I would suggest that we split the deferral fee between you and the town, since, you know, there seems to have been some miscommunication there. And that way you have a chance to go through the application with the planning staff and come back with a more favorable outcome. It also gives us the opportunity to be able to see your grading and supporting documents for our purposes and our understanding, as well as the committee, so that we're not doing things in an underprivileged way or rushed way. That's my proposal. I don't know how Mr. Hardcastle, Mr. Dickey feels about that. It's open to discussion. Go ahead, Mr. Dickey.
Madam Chair, I am fine with that. I just want to point out, I have some concerns about the situation where it seems the gutters or the top of the roof approaches on the adjacent property. I'm sure that can be corrected construction-wise, but unless I can't see me agreeing to a variance on the side yard setback where the property overhangs the property. I just wanted to bring that to the applicant's attention. There's a couple little things we talked about. Roof. When you look at the picture and you look at the house, it seems to be a sloping roof. In one of the diagrams, it seems to have a gable roof. And in another diagram, it seems to show that the roof is a flat roof. So unless I'm reading something wrong, your diagrams and the existing situation doesn't seem to jive with each other. So I'd like him, if he goes for a deferral, to be prepared to explain that or correct that. Thank you.
Can I explain now?
Okay. No, Mr. Bob. Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I likewise to Member Dickey, I have noted some of the inconsistencies in the drawing materials that we have in front of us. And regardless of the lack of presence of a grading plan, I would have some concerns with rendering a decision on this matter. I would support a deferral, but unlike my colleagues, I believe that the submission materials require fulsome rework to ensure that there is consistency across all drawings and materials. And I believe that that is at the hands of the applicant and the owner to do. I do not believe that there is grounds to support a reduction in the deferral fee. The materials were submitted willingly as they are, and as I said, I would not have been able to be comfortable with the decision given the inconsistencies and how tight this side yard setback is and the potential for eve encroachment and that kind of thing. I think it's essential that this committee have materials that they can rely on and be comfortable with. So while I do support the principle of a deferral, I'm not sure that I can see my way to supporting a waiving of a portion of the fee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Okay, Mr. Ra, it seems that we will not be able to come to a decision on your application. You've heard the comments of the members of the committee. It's up to you. Once again, you have to be the one who requests a deferral. We can't force you to take one. In the event that you prefer that we rule on the matter with the documents that we have on hand and the proposed report from staff, it's also your prerogative. So you have to tell us what your decision is, whether to take a deferral or not.
Madam Chair, thank you so much for taking so much time for considering the application. I think it's logic, the way you're bringing it, and I will agree to do a deferral. And if you keep it the fee, as I'm saying, I'm gonna pay it myself, but if you can do, as you said, make some adjustment there, I will appreciate it. I just want to respond to Mr. Stewart for the drawing. The gable there is fake. It's just to be consistent with the house, because the house has a gable there. It's just a fake gable. The roof is flat. It seems on the front that it's a gable, but it's not. It's a flat roof with a 2-3% slope. So I cleared that with the building department also, because they seems like that. I don't know why they give the drawings, give the idea like that, but it's a fake gable. It's not. It just is a part of the wall. So the wall, the surrounding is going to surround in the front, the flat roof. It's going to be like a triangle there, like a gable, just to make it not more. It's like an architectural feature than a structure. But if you have other concerns, I can review the drawings. But I think because I discussed that with the staff at the building code.
Just make sure that with the deferral, you have clarified all your submissions and all your documents are present for staff to circulate them, including building staff and site plan, all of that, like, so that there's nothing missing.
Yeah, I have this question. Do I have to resend again the site grading, or they already have it shared it, or I don't know? So do I have to send it again to someone?
Madam Secretary Treasurer, with the deferral, there are resubmissions, correct? Madam Secretary Treasurer?
I believe we have all of his drawings. Unless he needs to change anything, he can definitely resubmit if he needs to make any changes. If everything is staying as is, we have the grading plan that he sent that was too late, so I believe we have all of our material.
Okay. Mr. Ba, just speak to the Secretary Treasurer upon us ruling on this matter and make sure that all your T's and I's are crossed and dotted, and so that there's no miscommunication. Mr. Dickey, how do you feel about the reduction? Mr. Hardcastle does not support it, so it's up to you to weigh in on the matter.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, you want to ask a question? Go ahead.
So the applicant to the Secretary Treasurer and the planner, perhaps, the applicant says he sent the grading plan or whatever to the Secretary Treasurer, but if he had sent it to the planner, we would have been in a different position. It seems he sent it to the Secretary Treasurer in time before this meeting. Maybe the fellow just made a mistake. He thought he had to send it to the Secretary Treasurer when really the planning department wanted it. Why? If it had gone the other way to the planning department, you would have had the opportunity, we assume, to look at it. I mean, provided you had enough time. Okay, don't get me wrong there. Sarah?
Through you, Madam Chair, if we do receive the when this grading plan, it would have to be also circulated to the engineering department. So it's not just the planning department that would have to review it. It would have to be reviewed by multiple internal agencies.
So I think that's where what happened is he sent it in, but Sharon couldn't send it because circulation deadline had already passed. Correct? Am I understanding this correctly?
That's right, Madam
Correct.
Chair.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. An answer from both of you is fine. So, Mr. Hardcastle?
Madam Chair, I'm going to back my previous comments back. Okay. I don't believe in my years here, I've done this before, but I've taken a look at the drawings and I did miss the notations and the additional line work on the drawings. I will back my comments back and I would support a deferral with a partial reduction in the deferral fee. And yes.
Okay. So me and Mr. Hardcastle are in agreement. Mr. Dick, do you support us? Okay. Very
Madam Chair.
Okay. Yes.
We do have a attendee with a hand up.
Oh, very well. I was waiting for that. I did note that Mr. Mark Shabor was asked to attend. I assume that that's the neighbor.
Yes, I believe so. One moment, I'll move him in.
Is he on a phone call or is he coming through the computer?
Madam Chair, it looks like he's through the computer, although I can't see him. I'm not sure if he can hear you or not.
Okay. Mr. Shabor, you asked to attend the meeting for 150 Richmond Road, CAV 166-2024. If you can hear us, can you unmute yourself, please, and turn your camera on if possible? Oh, okay, I can hear you now, yes.
You can hear me. I'm not sure how to turn on the camera.
That's fine, go ahead.
So, good evening, Madam Chair, and good evening, members of the community. So, as you know, I'm a direct neighbor of the property which is in question. And the reason why I'm objecting, which I have opinion about this project, is that at this point, the new built garage is completely not pictured as the situation exists. The reason for this is that, for example, first issue, it's slab, which is the garage built, it's asphalt, it's an asphalt drive. The new build shows a concrete poured driveway with rebars and 6-inch slab and all other necessary concrete forming procedures to erect this garage. The existing posts, which were actually mentioned by Mr. Edward, 4x4. The new build is 2x6. So basically, I do not understand how the existing carport is just being transformed into a new garage. Also, the second thing is the brushes which I have against the property are mature, and they, with the direction of that close of the walls of the garage, they will die. Those are decorative brushes and greenery, so I would like to keep them as well. Next thing is most of the buildings on my street, on our street over here, are within a limit of 4 foot away from the property line. Another thing is the property on my right side, which is on, I can't remember the number, I think once. Anyway, on the west side, it's already built much closer than required setback, and naturally there was even permit for that. The issue with the water, runoff water on the property is pure. The neighbors just south of us are complaining with the amount of water which is not being dispersed properly, because previous owner on 150 Richmond has built up over the 50-some years period his property much higher than original grading was done. Now, since that close, since the building, the new erected garage will be that close, there will be no way of building as well in that area, you know, between my garage and their garage. Also, the site plan of 3 lots, which is 150, 154, and the next door, are outdated, and those lots they show huge amount of space in between the houses. Meanwhile, when you look at the aerial view of the houses, it shows how close they are. And it wouldn't be advisable, in my opinion, to build a garage that big. Sorry, that close, not that big, that close to the property line. So just to keep most of the street architecture and in similar way, with the low density building, I just don't see it that it would be beneficial for anybody.
Well, I'm not sure if you were in attendance from the beginning. Staff raised some concerns about draining and so forth and grading. The committee members also raised some concerns, and what we had agreed upon before you started to speak, but I'm glad that you did, because now Mr. Ba has heard your comments, and I urge him, once he takes this deferral, that he talks to the neighbor, and which is yourself, and make sure that everything is done to the satisfaction of both of you, and you work together for the benefit of, you know, the neighborhood. So our next step was going to be that we provide him with a deferral, at which time he would resubmit, if needed, some of his drawings and grading plan and so forth, so that staff can review it and make further comments. And you will also be circulated on that notice to attend as well again. And hopefully by then, you know, you will have been able to speak to him face to face, and these concerns can be mitigated and addressed. That's what our next step is. But we appreciate your comments, and they're all on record now, and can be reviewed. At this time, we're going to take the matter into committee and vote on the request for a deferral.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, the applicant requested a deferral. We agreed to a deferral with a reduced fee where the town will share 50% of the cost, and all those in support. Okay, the application has been deferred. Mr. Ba, please make sure that all your submissions are supported and provided, and please speak to the neighbor, Mr. Mark Shabar, to make sure that things are done in a neighborly fashion and to the satisfaction of both parties.
Thank you so much. It's been 1 year that since we did the application and never approached. So I don't know. At least the owner, because I don't live. I'm in Toronto. He's in Oakville. So
yeah, well, now you know.
But now I know. Yeah, I will try to speak to him for sure.
Very well. Okay, and your deferral has been approved. Have a good night. Thank you both
so much
for your comments. Okay, thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Okay. I just need to make sure that I'm on the right page here. Okay, we are moving on to application CAV 137 of 2024 at 400 Pine Grove Road. Again, that's CAV 137 of 2024 at 400 Pine Grove Road. That's deferred from the September 18th, 2024 meeting. I have Mr. David Crothers as the agent.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Madam Chairman. Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is David Crothers from Crothers and Associates of 505 York Boulevard in Hamilton, Ontario. I'm here as the agent on behalf of the owner, Eddie Hanai, to ask for approval under subsection 45 of the Act for the two variances outlined in the consolidated report. I've read through planning staff report, which include the following. There are no objections to the proposed variance. The no objections from the region and various outside agencies. And I also saw Urban Forestry's comment that the lateral water service should be installed inside the 3.6 meter tree protection zone, which we'll do. As part of our application, I also provided a justification report outlining our ideas and reasoning behind our minor variance requests. But tonight I'd like to just touch on specifically the two variances, variance 1 and 2. Variance 1, the requested gross floor area ratio of 45.15% versus the maximum allowable of 41.0%. The intent of the maximum residential floor area regulation is to regulate the overall scale and massing of a dwelling so as to ensure that the dwelling is in keeping with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. The building on the subject lands has been designed to include a number of articulations in the front and upper facade of the dwelling, therefore breaking up the massing of the dwelling's corner streetscapes. It's a very interesting design because it does flank two streets, so we had to be very careful on how that looks from, as you're turning the corner. Furthermore, the proposed design complies with all the minimum setback and height requirements. We try to design the entire home within all the regulations, but unfortunately, there's two that did come up, and one is the gross floor area, and the second would be the lot coverage. The proposed increase in RFA is compatible with the range of dwelling sizes which exist in the neighborhood, and our increase in RFA will result in an additional 323 square feet of area, which is permitted under the regulations. Variance to the requested lot coverage of 36.2 versus the maximum allowable of 35. The zoning bylaw in this area requires that the floor area of covered porches and walkout basement areas be included in the calculation of the lot coverage. This results in situations where proposed lot coverage is elevated. In the case of the subject lands, appropriately 5.2 of the requested lot coverage is contained in the front covered porch, the rear terrace, and the basement walkout area. The front covered porch and rear covered porch design assist in providing architectural diversity in the design. Furthermore, the front covered porch is a noted design feature of dwellings in the surrounding neighborhood. I also highlight that the proposed dwelling features a large facade step back above that rear covered porch, so it's not like it's a two-story mass sticking out in the backyard, thereby reducing the dwelling's visual massings and privacy concerns. In conclusion, as described above, the requested variances will allow for reinvestment to occur on the subject lands in a manner that I believe is compatible and in keeping with the current streetscape and neighborhood. The requested variances satisfy the 4 tests of Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, in our opinion, represent good design and planning. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions or items of clarification? I see none. Okay. Has there been any calls with interest for this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
We've had no calls.
Thank you very much. We'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based upon my review of the owner's application, site plans, building elevations, my site visit, presentation by the owner's consultant, and the planning status report, I am satisfied that the variances are minor in nature and conform to the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I put forth a motion that the application that applied for be approved, subject to the condition that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated August 12th, 2024, and the elevation drawings dated August 9th, 2024, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if the building permit had not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. None opposed. Have a good night.
Thank you, committee. Have a great evening.
Application CAV 145 of 2024 at 349 Gloucester Avenue. Again, it's CAV 145 of 2024 at 349 Gloucester Avenue, deferred from October the 2nd of 2024. I have.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rajneesh Prihar, the owner of 349 Gloucester. We are planning to demolish a single-story home and build a 2-story home. We have applied for two minor variances, one for the garage area and one for the gross floor area. The garage is required to accommodate 2 SUVs, a charging station, storage, as well as a car. And then the gross floor area was an airing calculation by my architect, and it would at this point be impossible to try and reduce the the dwelling gross floor area to accommodate and be within the various requirements. I would just have to redo the entire home drawings to try and reconfigure it out. So that's why that application was made.
Okay. Thank you, Are there any questions or items of clarification of the applicants? Okay, I see none. Has anyone called with interest for this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
We've had no calls, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the materials, including the written staff report, and having heard the presentation of the homeowner, I am satisfied that the requested variances conform to the four tests of the Act. Find that the variances will not result in any negative impact upon the street. The additional garage GFA is internalized and not visible as a predominant mass, and that the residential floor area variance is relatively modest and mitigated to a large degree by the architectural detailing of the building. Accordingly, I'll put forward a motion of approval subject to two conditions. Those being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated September 27th, 2024, revision number 14, and that the approval expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we have minutes from November the 13th to confirm. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. And we are motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. We are adjourned at 8:27 p.m.